Many of you know me, and others have gotten to know me during the last few days. I identify culturally with the city of New Orleans, where I lived for 39.5 years, all during my maturity, and published much and taught and made many friends. The fact is I live in Houston now. That's sort of Louisiana West. But I identified strongly with Louisiana, and we've got Louisianans here. I'm so pleased about that. A number of the poems I shall read tonight are new poems that date from April 2020 into this present year. So I'll start with one called Contagion. It appeared in Chronicles in this past February. This poem, like a number of others I shall read, is in quatrains, that is 4 lines, stanzas with 4 lines each, rhymed A-B, A-B. Contagion, November 2020. We've got 5 elevators, 1 for freight. For 40 floors, you'd think they would suffice. We residents would not be forced to wait inordinately. That assumption's nice, but wrong. Today I tried to go downstairs to mail 3 letters. I had on a mask. Cars came, doors opened, briefly. No one shares a ride, however. You can't even ask without offense, for we're compelled by rule to isolate ourselves. It's the disease, of course, and our docility a tool for those in office. Smile as it may please you, nothing's to be done. Again, doors closed. 10 elevators stopped. A doggy wagged his tail at me. That's all. When I'd supposed I must give up an empty one, I bagged it. Farther down, I let 2 people in. In me, autonomy and sense run deep. To others, judging for oneself is sin. Lord Fauci shakes his stick at us. They're sheep, a flock enfeebled by anxiety, who will believe most any pseudo-fact of experts, even contradictory, retracted soon, or plainly inexact. Alighting, I encounter man and wife attired like beekeepers. Who might they be? Alone, molecular, that is not life as we should wish it, reasonable, free. The letters posted, I must stand in line to ride upstairs. All right, that's not outrageous. Reflect, though, power is not anodyne, and tyranny, like COVID, is contagious. Oh, thank you. Just smile and approve and without applause, and we'll go on to the next one. All right, this is titled For a Champion. Some years ago, I was attacked on an internet e-zine, an internet magazine. I was attacked, one, as associated with a racist publication, namely Chronicles. The editor being racist, that made me racist too, of course. 2, I was attacked as a bad poet, and that really gets me. Furthermore, the critic didn't like my nature poetry. Now, I think that's sick if you don't like nature poetry. And you will see that I have a little garden or outdoor poem to come. Anyway, a friend wrote a poem in my defense, and he's my champion. For a champion. I don't reply to insults often. Not my style. A waste of time. Besides, I was not reared for such contentious intercourse. But while I shall be reticent, a friend has cleared my name. 3 missiles launched in my defense. King Arthur, were he here with mighty sword, would not be needed. Courtesy, good sense, poetic wit suffice. The fellow's gourd. He called my formal poems precious, prissy, ignoring women's nature, taste, and tone, and treated me as just a worthless missy. Had I been coarse or woke, I might have shown. He thought it must have had to do with race or Tory prejudice. No alibi. He's quite mistaken. This is not the case, except in his strabismic, crooked eye. He singled out a classical illusion as evidence of hopeless obsolescence. I've read his stuff, banal. To his confusion, he'll see it all dissolve into putrescence. So thank you, sir, for taking up my cause, my colors, nature's shoes, which he disdains. Your mighty pen will surely get applause. He'll get poetic justice for his pains. Tell the birds I am coming. This is a New Orleans poem, in a way. It anticipates a visit to New Orleans, dated winter 2021. Tell the birds I'm coming. Old friends of mine along Bayou St. John invite me for a visit. Welcome words. So far the winter's been quite dismal, wan. That bayou and its banks are home to birds, anhingas, pelicans, and cormorants, blue herons, ducks, all masters at their craft, their livelihood, their prehistoric dance of stalking, diving, rising on a draft of sun-warmed air, or bobbing up like boys. So tell them, please, I'll be there soon. And while we can, we'll savor the peculiar joys of birds and friendship in New Orleans style. We'll watch them fish, admiring their ease in swoop and plunge, the iridescent shine on feathers, follow graceful moves through trees, live oak and cypress. We'll have coffee, wine, and lunch on trays in your solarium. Outside, you'll prune a branch. We'll celebrate your garden, nature's green curriculum, and birds, the flying forms of our estate. My daughter and her family live in Brooklyn. I in Houston, as you know. To know that is useful for this poem. The boys mentioned here are her husband and their son. This, like most of my poems, is a moral poem that goes beyond the immediate pretext or case. So it's called Girls' Weekend, late August 2020. One's Clara. She is 16 and a half. Another is her mother, 49. Then I. The label girl will make you laugh. This poem and its vision, though, are mine. While I like facts, hyperbole has charm. We use it often, like synecdoche and oxymoron, surely without harm. The circumstances are bizarre. We 3 have met in Nashville, neutral. Quarantine would catch me in New York. At the hotel to celebrate a toast and fair cuisine. Masks shed, we study menus, order well. Tomorrow, art, fine Turners from the Tate, and at the Parthenon, full-sized, a twin of that in Athens, 60 paintings, great American examples. Since we're kin, we can be close, embrace without a care. The boys at home, meanwhile, will entertain themselves, attend the ailing dog, prepare their own adventure, manly, when the bane of this confinement ends. Perhaps they'll hike the Smokies, snorkel in Blue Island Sea, or watch the Astros, travel west to bike at red desert roads in Utah. We agree. No hedonism here. Pursuing good, one learns to be so. Muscles have their place, like eyes, ears, taste. Well practiced, understood, in pleasure as in love and grief, there's grace. I think some of the Louisiana contingent is missing, but you all from Louisiana will enjoy this. This is in free verse, but my free verse does not consist of words scattered around the page, randomly or quasi-randomly. Old Mr. Chauvin. When old Mr. Chauvin sat outside in summer in Louisiana heat, he wore a cardigan of heavy wool, a woody green. It matched the foliage around him, banana trees, bamboo, cat's paw, huge oaks that overhung the fences. Only think, the temperatures when cool were in the 80s, 95 perhaps when warm. Humidity nearly as high, of course, blown in one's face, or on lazy days just wafted idly from the river, many lakes and gulf, some distance off, but not too far for wind. He was a widower who'd come from Terrebonne Parish to New Orleans so his daughter could take care of him. He didn't much like air conditioning. The noise, the draft along his neck. He knew it was unnatural. After all, he hadn't had it as a boy way down on Bayou Black, and he'd survived. So, in the afternoon, following dinner and a necessary nap, he makes his way with care down 4 back steps, his sweater on, to get warmed up in nature. He listens to cicadas, traffic, panel trucks and cars, not airboats, graceful pirogues, shouting from the neighbors, the blind man 2 fences down, finding his way back to his garage abode and cursing. Old Mr. Chauvin has seen and heard a lot. The bayou is a little slice of life, provincial surely, but as true as one could wish. No need to see a wider world, not Paris. Anyway, his ancestors were Bretons, coastal people, fishermen, and fiercely independent. Not Chicago or New York. The names, the thought appall him. True, that Guidry boy named Ron from Lafayette, he'd known a lot of Guidrys. The famous pitcher was a New York Yankee, but he'd had the sense to come back home when he retired. And Bobby Hebert settled in New Orleans. Oh, his daughter's calling. Him? Her husband? She comes out for no good reason but that she, too, likes the sultry heat, the shade below the oak trees, the flowering Rosa de Montana vine, and bougainvillea, deep pink. She, too, remembers Bayou Black. When he is gone and she must wear a sweater in the summer, she'll sit out and think of him, at peace with her life, knowing how she might have said things to him better, but turning into him, or wishing she could. The next one is a Louisiana poem, but written from the point of view of Aberystwyth in Wales. It's called Bloody Marys. A Louisiana friend of mine from North Louisiana was there on leave working in the National Library of Wales in Aberystwyth for 15 months. I was already on the island that contains England, Scotland, and Wales, and I went to visit him. It's a very small place. It does have a university plus the National Library. Now, two other things. The word Cymru, Cymru, means Welsh. And in the first line, I use the word sic, that is bracket, S-I-C, which means as is, before the offending or mistaken phrase, because that's the way it fits the rhythm. And I use it because you will see the hotel mentioned has a long name, Hotel Belle Vue, not Vue, but Vue Royale. So it's franglais, it's French and English mixed up, and it's a mess. Bloody Marys. Behold the sick Hotel Belle Vue Royale. A case of adding French to make a name half right sounds elegant and not banal. In time, the place may thereby earn acclaim. Though situated on a lovely bay with splendid views in Aberystwyth, Wales, reason the more, perhaps, to add cachet, its mirrors, polished bar, and famous ales are known to few. The town is small, remote. The students at the uni cannot pay for fancy wines and 5-star table d'hôte. There's very little custom on this day. We choose 2 stools. The barman comes to take our order. David smiles. A Bloody Mary. A puzzled silence. First, how does one make it? We can read the fellow's mind. What is it? A tutorial ensues. Tall glasses, spirits, ice, tomato juice, Tabasco, Worcestershire. Oh, this is news. Black pepper, celery. To introduce a Welshman to the drink is a delight. There's no Tabasco, though, not green nor red, nor celery. Though Spanish olives might do nicely, or a pickled bean instead. The fellow comes around. He does his best. We raise a glass to him, to Cymru pride. We chatter, drink, and gaze out to the west, where sunset spreads its silver on the tide. And, with the barman, speak of New Orleans. For us, a local dinner then, Welsh rabbit. With or without Tabasco and green beans, for him, a Bloody Mary's now a habit. The next is a little set called 3 Sonnets for Stella. They're classical sonnets, Italian form sonnets. Stella is Stella Nasanovic, a woman originally from St. Bernard Parish, that is Greater New Orleans, but in Lake Charles, Louisiana, retired from McNeese State there. The year 2020-21 was terrible for her. 1. On restoration of her power. Thank God, the power that failed was not your own, your mind, your sensibility, your art. Mere lighting, cooling, stove, your mobile phone went out. Not incidental, though, all part for us of being bodies, flesh and bone and needy. On the coastline where we chart the hurricanes, fierce winds, great waters blown, vast floods, how can one moor a feeling heart? You lived by lanterns, one small fan and grit, and ate cold food from tins. Full benefit is still to come as poetry lay low to keep its counsel. You received and gave good courage, and you learned what signs to save. The lights are on, the words will overflow. 2, on moving for another, she had to move for her brother, that is, empty his residence. The task is doubled by the circumstance, and moving's rarely easy. What a year for you. 2 hurricanes, the long missed chance of COVID closing things, dispensing fear, and then your only brother had a stroke across the state. Disabled badly, near incompetence. The parquet spun and spoke, though it is done. So now you'll drive there, clear his place of furnishings, his books and clothes, his character, and trap a feral cat to be expelled from its warm habitat. You do not wish the creature dead, God knows. Enough already. May we too be moved by goodness, move for others, and be proved. 3, in the great Louisiana freeze. It was terrible. Her house had been worked on some. Her house hit by the 2 hurricanes. The freeze was horrible. It was terrible in Texas too. I think you must have read about these things. In the great Louisiana freeze. Your pipes, old wounded soldiers of the frost, are wrapped. Below the house, a lattice gives a bit of warmth to errant cats. But you have lost your garden, what was left when one storm hit after another. Now the power's off, again, and inside temperatures fall by 5s and 10s in no time. Philosophe you must be. But you ask, Lord, is this all? To be distressed, though, is to be alive. Before it's dark, get out a candle, a chafing dish, good china, to contrive the atmosphere of a delightful meal. Pour wine, of course. There's little you can't handle. There's little you can't handle with your experience. Serve out your zeal. Now, I've brought 4. I have 5 more, total of 5 more, which I call Abbeville favorites, because some of you have heard these before, but there are a lot of people who've never heard any of my poetry before. So I think I shall start with Hats, which some of you may remember. It's a New Orleans poem. It's from a collection of mine that appeared in 2011 at LSU Press, Under the Pergola. This is in free verse. Hats, a portrait. She lives alone still in her New Orleans relic of a house on Esplanade, among objets d'art and hats, perched in a hall tree. Crazy D, the neighbors say behind her back. Not daft, though, merely out of style. Her ways were fashionable once. Privacy, good taste, proprieties, and lasting love, along with hats and gloves, high heels and stockings, shopping on Canal Street, Latin Mass at the cathedral, bridge, and luncheons. Now her love, her friends are dead. No children, just a nephew, covetous. The Latin Mass was ended by the Vatican. Canal Street is for tourists. And she can't wear high-heeled shoes or pull those awful pantyhose on stiffened limbs. But hats endure, and gloves. In a chest of drawers, she leafs through stacks. Long, glazed ivory kidskin gloves for balls. Fur-lined gloves for winter. Pigskin, honey-toned, for races at the fairgrounds. Cotton summer gloves, all yellowed. Fishnet for a costume ball. Ah, yes, that night. Venetian mask, Elizabethan collar, fur, and waist of 22. A pair of gloves in hand, she walks by little bird steps to a beveled window and the millinery tree. Returning from the honeymoon with Jacques that year, the days when people crossed by ship with boxes, trunks, and portmanteaux, she brought from Paris 15 hats. She chooses one, a gray fedora, stylish as a 40s film, and tries it, thinking of the honeymoon again. Another in blue straw with a little turned-up brim and pheasant feathers angled jauntily. And this, a favorite, a darling Homburg of a luscious black velour and grosgrain trimmed. She'll not go out today, too cool, with impish lake gusts whipping trees and rattling shutters. But there's nothing wrong with make-believe. She dons the Homburg, adds a bit of veiling found by chance to anchor it against imaginary wind, draws on the gloves, and wraps around her throat an ostrich feather boa from the parlor cabinet. Voila! She checks the mirror, marred by her, like her, by age spots, judges the effect. A little later, might she even stroll a moment on her gallery with oaks and oleanders as the surrogates of friends? A superannuated fashion show and Jacques' devoted shade returning as in dream. But now the tears have come again. Perhaps she should not try it, after all, since people stare and meddle, might report her to the nephew, say she's lost her memory, when memory is all she has. The hat's hung up, the gloves and boa cast aside. A shaft of slanting light reminds her of a crimson sun at sea, the ship's wake gleaming. Time's a room where dust motes swirl and sparkle in the sun, then disappear. The mansion creaks and lists into the evening. Shivering, she rises, draws the curtains, going down in waves of dark. Now, I've read this poem, I think, every time that I've come here. It's called Carolina, and it is set in South Carolina. That is the main framework. It is a monologue in a woman's voice, a monologue in blank verse. That's iambic pentameter without rhyme. So she is talking about her past. South Carolina, 1875. They found us drifting in the sea along the coast, the rations almost gone, the three of us half crazy from the wind and sun, the boat a little leaky but afloat. From Saint-Domingue, that's Haiti, from Saint-Domingue, The currents had been strong, the weather fair. We had been carried up past Charleston, we were told. I don't recall the journey well, you know. At 5, bereft, how much I did not realize then, of both my parents, sailing empty seas with Lou, our old negresse, and Georges, my brother. She had learned, it was the years of those revolts of Haitians under Toussaint Louverture, that all the servants and the slaves, herself included, were to rise against the French that week and slaughter everyone. She would not do it to us, children she had nursed and loved. And yet she could not speak against her people. She had thought to take us out, a boating party, so she said. She'd heard of islands thick with travelers' palm, where birds refreshed themselves in flight. We left, the sails like angels' wings. She'd managed to purloin a few supplies, fresh water most of all, some food, some sheets. We lived on coconuts, I think, and sugar toward the last. She may have had some rum. She sang to us at night her Creole lullabies. When we were saved, she told our story in her broken French. The strange thing is, it was some French who found us, Huguenots. And stranger still, my name is Caroline. As if somehow by providence my mother had foreseen our odyssey. Now Lou Goodwoman lies in Carolina ground. We had, of course, no photographs. My parents' smiles became a phosphorescent sea, translucent, dark, untouchable, a ghostly imago, receding in the waves. Yet now they seem like children, younger than my own. They walk beneath the palm trees in my dreams and laugh, the trade winds scattering perfume, or sit at sunset, holding hands and speak of France and golden journeys. Look, the tide is high. Sargasso shines in jeweled light. At dusk, I listen to the birds that wheel and dive and watch the stars grow powdery and dense, and sometimes think I hear a song, a shout, two shadows calling on a distant shore. Another Louisiana poem. This came out in Under the Pergola. Kraten Point. Kraten Point is a house named for the family who owned it. And this also is a monologue in the heroine's, you can call her a heroine, in the heroine's voice. The location is St. Landry Parish, Louisiana. So people talk. Then let them. This house wears its honor quite as well as those along the prairies of Acadia. The land, a Spanish grant, was purchased by a man from France in 1800, later bought by Hippolyte Chrétien. Young Hippolyte, my husband, owned it next, and now it's mine. Félicité, the Spanish Creole wife. He courted me. What is a temper worth? If one embraces sparks, mantilla, how do you say it in English? Mantilla, eyes of dark St. Elmo's fire, tendrilled hair, ungoverned with its Moorish waves, one must expect to burn. Before the war in 1812, Pierre and Jean Lafitte were visitors, it said. Perhaps they dealt in contraband, alive. But in the fight against the British, the Lafittes turned out with Hippolyte and other planters, sailed the bayous, fought with Jackson to defend New Orleans. My Spanish father, too. Against his country's custom, he believed in liberty. Perhaps that's why he chose America, and gave me leave to do just as I pleased, or nearly. When we wed, the neighbors waited for the match to blaze. It's true we quarreled, young Hippolyte and I. I smoked, unheard of for a woman, drank a bottle by myself, played cards and won. But any marriage is combustible. We did agree, however, on a house of crimson brick, flamboyant on the green surrounding us all seasons. Cypress blinds, great Tuscan columns, fine entablature, acanthus leaf medallions, heavy walls, a fortress against weather, mantled hearths composed a truce between us. 4 years passed. The house was finished. Shortly, Hippolyte was dead of yellow fever. What he'd got as dowry, stubbornness and mettle, saved his legacy. When highwaymen appeared and threatened me, I shot one through the throat. The others fled. I traveled by myself by boat downriver, managed my affairs, then harvested new wealth from poker games when men, such fools, believed that they could win against a widow. Rumors fly of treasure here because my Hippolyte did not trust banks. Indeed, his servants stole and buried gold piastres in the garden, but he talked with some persuasion. Fortune turns her wheel. Lo, sulfured skies, untimely cries of birds. It's Hippolyte I want to see, not God. Companionship with him and with his ghost left embers that have warmed me since. It's time to reconcile. Old ash, new flame. We'll walk the rooms of light, and I'll be young again. Well, this is called Liberty Furnace. It's set in Virginia. It's about a forge in western, not West Virginia, but western, in the state of Virginia. And it's in free verse, but again, very controlled free verse. Liberty Furnace. Yet we had thought about it before. Narrow lives back in those hollows, faces born to plain rail fences, a web of years, white with love's moons, the snows, the buried child, then all become twice past in a rush of vines and vindicated ash that greened even death. Reaching the cul-de-sac, dropped between cat's cradle ribs, one came into exile, met wildness riding down the pits, endured its roar, a struggling of winds, an animal gasp, unless it were ghosts who cried from the ridge's throat. But this hardness was liberty, or so they named the forge, and the streams ran red for 100 years with Allegheny iron and a hammered strength, until the weathercock hung askew, pointing toward loss, all loss. What wounds autumn now leaves in these hills, which no mill can wash. Flames leap down from the sun, the brick turns incandescent, and fire burns again to refine our late indifference, before our bones shall blanch, like theirs, below the willows. Not that we should ever make our bread, our staves from this soil, but ask the question always, can we live more freely with their iron in our heart, this side of their peace? This poem I have never read before here, nor any poem from the book from which it comes, called Range of Light, LSU Press, 2007, because they're all poems on the west and southwest of the United States. So this has nothing to do with South Carolina, the South, but it's got plenty to do with things that we believe in. So it's called a Taos hymn. Taos is a town in northern New Mexico, Taos County, near Taos Pueblo, which is the only standing pueblo of the of the 21 or 2 Rio Grande Pueblo tribes. That is, the tribe still exists, but they live in little villages, things with prefabricated houses or other type of modern houses. Taos Pueblo is still built. Ansel Adams did marvelous photographs of this. Willa Cather wrote about it, and others. So it looks like the Indian Pueblo of your imagination. It is viewed as special, and Taos Mountain behind it is viewed by the Indians there as sacred, as a place where the Great Spirit collects himself, walks, perhaps, gathers. So this is a Taos hymn. It's short lines. It's a short poem. It's a tetrameter, which means 8 syllables only per line, rhymed A, A, B, B, C, C, and so on. And though this is not important, you might be interested in the little fact it has only 2 sentences in it. But the punctuation and the movement of the syntax and so on take care of that. That won't seem, I think, like one unending sentence. So, a Taos hymn. O Spirit of the living God, O voice of wind, O leavened sod, made visible in mountain's age, the water's song, the rippling sage, dark-shaded canyon, and the whine of storm through ponderosa pine. As Christ the Logos, hallowed words of earth, grain, lilies, nesting birds, and gesturing toward a desert place, invoked repose and simple grace. Give benediction to us here who celebrate the ripened year in Taos Pueblo's perfect air, with reverence akin to prayer, admiring golden cottonwoods, clear river, and these native goods, retablos, silver, azure stone, clay vessels, weavings, awls of bone, whereby belief and weathered hands did honor to ancestral lands, and to the great Creator's mind, which shares its power with mankind, configuring the endless skies, divinely formed for human eyes. So may these artifacts of earth remain as evidence of worth, attesting to creation's art and holy deserts in the heart, whose blue horizons blaze to fire and shimmer with divine desire, God held in azimuthal ken, redeeming us and world. Amen.